Statius Warhammer OP! No, I'm just kidding with you. Welcome back to Runescape, guys. This is going to be a Statius Warhammer review, and it has become known now amongst the PVM community that the Statius Warhammer is pretty damn good, and I'll tell you why in this video. So firstly, the Statius Warhammer, what is it? Well, it's a weapon that is dropped by Revenants, which are ghostly versions of creatures slain in the God Wars. These Revenants can be found in the Farinthri dungeon in the wilderness. And I do wonder whether this area is still as dangerous as it used to be, because it used to be extremely dangerous to go here. It used to be a well-known PvP area due to the fact that back in the day, Revenant weapons were very expensive and it was decent money making per hour here. And you also had the risk of PvPing, so if you're a decent PK, you could come here and just like slay people and also get drops from Revenants. Also, the Vesper Longsword special has been increased, but that's not what this video is about. But in general, the Statius Warhammer, there are many different items that can be dropped from Revenants. So, you know, this isn't going to necessarily make Revenants an amazing moneymaker per hour now, because there are that many different Vesta drops that you can get. You have no guarantee that you're going to get the hammer. It's quite rare at the end of the day. Alright, so the hammer cost me 19.9 million GP to test this out for this video, and I'll get into ways in which you can make that more cost effective later on in this video as well. But essentially, the main uses of the Statius Warhammer is that it has a special attack called Smash, which requires 35% adrenaline and deals up to 50% more damage and lowers your opponent's defense by 30%. Now, the 30% defense reduction is the most important part about this special attack, because it actually provides you with a significant increase in accuracy when in a PVM scenario. And some say, especially at Yakamaru, it almost provides up to 100% accuracy. Now, like any other debuff or many other debuffs such as vulnerability, it will affect the entire team. So the defense reduction is on the boss itself, and therefore it increases the accuracy of every single player in your team fighting that boss. So it's fantastic for social PVMing. The hammer itself lasts for 1 hour of combat. It has no recharge percentage, so we're unable to actually work out exactly how it degrades, which is very frustrating, and I just wish Jouts were more transparent with these things. But so far, when discussing with a few mates, it seems to degrade whilst the special is active. One of the best situations to use this hammer is within raids, especially against Yakamaru, as it significantly increases the speed of the kills when with a solid team, and you'd use the special on each pool except for the base. Now, in order to make this more cost effective, if you have a permanent raids team, you could spread the cost out, as it only requires one person to use the Warhammer for the entire team to receive the effect, as the effect is influenced onto the boss itself, like I said earlier. So if you have like a permanent host, you would get the permanent host to actually use the hammer, and from my calculations, it should last for at least well over 10 kills if using it correctly. So at 20 mil per hammer, it would work out approximately 200k per person within the raid team per kill. So if you look at it that way, and the loot that you can actually manage to get from a raid, it doesn't sound too bad when you put it into that context. But for one person to go and spend and use, it's extremely expensive. But these prices are not stable, they have been fluctuating massively. And just in case you hadn't noticed by now, which I hadn't for quite a while until a mate pointed it out, and I was just so shocked, the hammer itself actually has more damage than the Drygore as well, but it does have less accuracy than when using a Drygore. Now, one really important thing to note is that it's much easier to use if you're a melee. For example, maybe a melee base, which is quite nice to be honest, or even a melee DPSer slash debuffer, and you can actually set a person to play that role within your raids team to be the DPSer plus debuffer, so they could stack the hammer special plus vulnerability onto Yakamaru. It's also important to note, for the special to actually activate, it needs to damage the target, as it can splash, and that's why if you're using a magic setup and you just put the hammer on, there's a very high chance that it will splash because your accuracy will be very low. That's why it's recommended to be in a melee setup to minimize splashing. You can also take a melee switch if you want, but it is just more convenient just to use melee and maybe switch at the end within Mirage phase. Thank you for watching this review on the Statius Warhammer. Essentially, it decreases the defense of the monster that you're killing and therefore increases the accuracy of the players within your team. I'd say though it's only really worth using if you're going for records or if you've got a permanent team to spread the cost out, because at the end of the day, if we're looking at Yakamaru specifically, you can only loot Yakamaru, let's say, once every 2 days anyway, and therefore you don't have any increased incentive to really get faster kills unless you're going for like KC for kill count for final boss. That's the only other scenario. So yeah, I would say it's very expensive and therefore only worth it if you've got a permanent team where you can spread the cost out. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.